صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. All praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his countless blessings be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. In our today's session, we are going to talk about Salatu Qada'u Salatul Fa'ita. As we know that Salah is one of the important deeds in Islam. And after the Iman, as we have discussed in our previous sessions, after the Iman, the most valuable, the most important deed in Islam is Salah, is performing the prayer. So we have discussed many of the ahkam, many of the rulings concerning the Salah. Now in our today's discussion, we are going to talk about the qada, or making for missed prayer. If someone has missed prayer, so what he is supposed to do? Is qada important or there is no qada for him? So, or what is simply we can say what is the legal value of qada or making up the missed prayers. As far as the salah itself is concerned, it is all wajib. There is no any difference of opinion among all the scholars. All the scholars agree it is wajib, and not only wajib, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentions, inna salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta, that the salah has been made mandatory or obligatory upon the believers upon the prescribed time. So this prayer or this specific form of ibadah, it's not only that Sharia gives us the hukum or the ruling, rather it also tells us the proper time. So Fajr, it has its own specific timeline. For Dhuhr, a prescribed time has been already given by the Sharia. For Asr, Maghrib and Isha, so each prayer has its own specific time frame in which it is supposed to be performed. However, if a person would not perform this within its given time frame, within its given timeline, so is he required to perform after the passing of the time, or there is no any obligation upon him? Here is a difference of opinion. The scholars agree that it is obligatory for one who has forgotten the salah or slept through its time to make up the missed or qada prayer. This opinion is based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which we have already mentioned before. Now we also mention it. There is no negligence while one is asleep, but forgetfulness occurs when one is awake. If one of you forgets a prayer or sleeps through its time, then he should perform the salah when he recalls it. فَلْيُصَلِّهَا إِذَا ذَكَرَهَا. So let a person who has missed the prayer to perform this within its specific timeline. So whenever he remembers it, whenever he recalls it, he must perform this. However, if one falls unconscious, then he, according to one opinion, is that he need not repeat the salah unless he regains his consciousness with enough time to purify himself and perform the salah within its proper time. Abdul Razzaq rahimahullah ta'ala relates from Nafi' that Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma once fell sick and became unconscious and missed the prayer. When he regained his consciousness, he did not make up the missed prayer. Ibn Jurayj reports from Ibn Tawus on the authority of his father that if a sick person becomes unconscious, he is not to make up the prayers he missed. Muammar relates, I asked Az-Zuhri about one who becomes unconscious, and he said that he is not to make up the salah he missed. Hamad ibn Salama relates from Yunus ibn Ubayd that both Al-Hasan al-Basri and Muhammad ibn Sirin, both are famous tabi'in, said that a person who falls unconscious is not to make up the prayer he may miss. So concerning missing a salah intentionally, there's a difference of opinion, and a strong difference of opinion. The majority of scholars, specifically including all four schools of law, Ayyimatul Arba, that is Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, and Hanbali, they agree that it's a sinful act and a missed salah must be made up for. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah has mentioned in law, there is no way for one who leaves a salah intentionally to make it qada. So this is another opinion. So there are two opinions regarding if a person intentionally doesn't perform the salah. So now, whether he's required to make qada to make up for this salah, which he intentionally left, which he intentionally did not perform, or he must make some istighfar or seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or perform the nawafil to make up, to compensate or expiate what he has left in terms of obligatory prayers. So Jamhur says, if a person, whether intentionally or there is some reason for this, say for example, a person was asleep, he could not wake up at the proper time. A person, uh, just before the Zuhr, he slept, and he was awake after the Asr. So all through the time of the Zuhr, he could not wake up. Now what he's supposed to do? According to the Hadith, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Man nam aw nasiya." Or this is also possible that a person forgot. A person is held by such a grave situation that he forgot to perform the salah. So whenever he remembers it, he is required to make it up for the prayer he has already missed. So فَلْيُسَلِّ إِذَا ذَكَرَهَا. Whenever he remembers it, whether he wakes up from the sleep or he remembers that he already forgot to perform the salah, so he has to perform the salah. And there is no any difference of opinion among the fuqaha, among the scholars, as far as this part is concerned. However, based on this hadith and other relevant evidences, Jamhur, that is the majority of fuqaha, majority of the scholars, that is Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, and Hanbali scholars, they say, as when it is not allowed for a person who was asleep, when it is not allowed for a person who forgot to perform the salah to not to make up, when he is not allowed to leave it, to give it up, then how is it possible for a person who intentionally gives up the salah? So the difference of opinion is about if a person intentionally doesn't perform the salah, whether he is required to make up the salah or not. Jamhur says, as I said before, majority fuqaha, that is Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, Hanbali, all four schools of law, they say yes, he is bound to make up for the missing up prayer, for the misses up prayer. If a person has already left it, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Unintentionally, it can be that a person was sleeping, a person forgot to perform the salah, then or a person intentionally doesn't perform the salah because of laziness, because of lethargy. Sometimes nafs dominates a person and he doesn't want to perform the salah. So in that condition, according to Jamhur, yes, he is supposed to make up for this prayer. However, there is a Shah's opinion, rare opinion of Imam Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri, and a bunch of scholars have also followed the same opinion that he doesn't require to perform he's not supposed to perform to make up for the missed prayer, because qada is not allowed in such case. Yes, if he was asleep, there is a reason for him. If he forgot, there is a reason for him, as is mentioned in the hadith. However, if there is no reason, there is no excuse with him, he was neither asleep nor forgot to perform the salah, rather, intentionally he did not perform the salah, then he is not allowed to make up for this missed prayer. Rather, he should seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he should also perform a lot of nawafil so that this will compensate what he left. And Ibn Hazm rahimahullah ta'ala has mentioned a long discussion about it. So his opinion is, we try to find out his arguments and then the arguments of the Jamhur. And this will help us to understand this particular issue at length. Ibn Hazm says, rahimahullah ta'ala, and he's one of the propounders of the Zahiri school of thought, concerning one who leaves a salah intentionally until its time expires, he will never be able to make up for that salah. So according to them, there's no way to make up for the salah which a person has missed. Such a person should turn to Allah and ask his forgiveness and increase his good deeds and nawafil in order to increase his weight of good on the day of resurrection. As we know that on the day of Qiyamah, balance will be established, scales will be established, and the good deeds and the bad deeds of a person will be weighed over there. So if the good deeds are much, which are heavier than the bad deeds, then he will be, inshallah, declared to be successful. However, if the bad deeds appear to be heavier than the good deeds, then the case will be altogether otherwise. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, Malik and Ash-Shafi'i say that he can make up the prayer after its time has expired. And Malik and Abu Hanifa even say that if a person intentionally misses a prayer or few prayers, then he is to make up those prayers before he prays the present salah. Even if he has missed all 5 prayers and should, while making them up, miss the present salah. They say that if he missed more than 5 prayers, he is to begin by praying salah whose time is present, and then he is to make up the prayers he missed. The proof of our position, that is, Ibn Hazm maintains that his position, the evidences along with him, is found in the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, woe unto the worshippers, fawailul lil musallin alladhina hum an salatihim sahun, woe unto the worshippers who are heedless of their prayers. And then also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَخَلَفَ مِن بَعْدِهِمْ خَلْفٌ أَضَاعُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَاتَّبَعُوا الشَّهْوَاتِ فَسَيَلْقَوْنَ غَيًّا. And then there succeeded them, that is prophets, after the prophets, they were succeeded by generations, by the people. There succeeded them a later generation who wasted the prayers and followed their own lusts, but they will meet with destruction. Now, Ibn Hazm, based on these 2 verses in the Quran, makes his point. If one who intentionally misses a salah could make it up later, then why is it mentioned with affliction or transgression? Why Allah mentions that they will face the punishment? Those who wasted the salah. Of course, there is no affliction or transgression on one who delays the salah, but the case of one who procrastinates until the last portion of its permissible time expires is quite different. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has appointed certain times for the fard salah, for obligatory prayer. Both the beginning time and the ending time for the salah have been established. As we know that there's a timeline for each salah. For example, Zuhr, it starts from this particular time and until it remains until this point of time. So beginning and the ending time has already been mentioned. And there is no difference between praying a salah before its time and praying it after its proper time elapses, because in both cases, the salah is not performed within its prescribed time. This is not to draw an analogy between one and the other, but it is applying the same rule to them, as they both must be performed within the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever transgresses, whoever transgresses or crosses the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has verily wronged his own soul. The principle of making qada must be established by the proper sources of Islamic law, according to Ibn Hazm. Legislating in Sharia is not permissible. It means people are not allowed to make law of their own, setting the scales of halal and haram, except by Allah's authority, as evidenced by his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ibn Hazm says, we ask those people who say that one may make qada for a salah which he misses intentionally. Tell us about this salah that you want him to perform. Is it the same salah that Allah ordered him to perform, or is it the different one? Now his argument, his approach is to to establish his position. If they say, they refers to the Jamhur, who say that he has to make up the salah. If they say it is the same one, then what? Then we may say to them, then one who misses it intentionally is not guilty of being disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as he has done what Allah had ordered him to do. And there is no sin upon him according to your statement. And likewise, there should be no blame upon one who intentionally delays the salah until its time expires. But that is not acceptable position for any Muslim. If they say that it is not the salah which Allah ordered, we may say, you have told the truth, and this is a sufficient confession from them. Then we may ask them, is one who intentionally leaves the salah until its time expires being obedient or disobedient to Allah? If they say obedient, they are speaking the truth, and it is not valid that an act of disobedience should replace an act of obedience. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set specific limits through the tongue of his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the times of salah. As we have discussed when we talked about the time, prescribed time for the salah. So each salah has been given a specific time. For Fajr, there is a specific timeline. For Zuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, for all 5 obligatory prayers, there is a specific timeline in which a respective salah has to be performed, has to be observed. And failing in performing a respective salah in their respective timeline, then a person commits a major sin. As Prophet mentioned, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that whoever performs salah, whoever misses the salah intentionally, faqad ata babam, and the hadith says, man jama bayna salatayn bi ghayri udhrin. Man jama bayna salatayn bi ghayri udhrin, faqad ata baba min abwabil kaba'ir. Whoever performs 2 obligatory prayers together without an excuse. Whoever performs 2 obligatory prayers together, say Zuhr or Asr or Maghrib or Isha. Whoever performs 2 obligatory prayers together, بِغَيْرِ عُذْرٍ, without any legal excuse, proper excuse, فَقَدْ أَتَى بَابًا مِنْ أَبْوَابِ الْكَبَائِرِ, he surely committed a major sin. So there is no difference of opinion among the fuqaha that he commits a major sin if a person does not perform the salah intentionally within its respective what you call a timeline or time frame. And here Ibn Hazm says, rahimahullah ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, through his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he set the limits for each and every salah, and no one is allowed to cross the limits of this timeline. And then setting an ending time for the salah has no meaning to it. Such an opinion is nonsense, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us from it. Every action is connected with a certain time, and it is not valid outside of that time. If it was valid outside of that time, what would be the purpose of that time being specifically singled out for that act? The logic of this argument is clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our supporter. Then Ibn Hazm rahimahullah, he has mentioned a detailed discussion about proving his point that qada is not allowed. If a person missed out the salah intentionally, then he cannot make it up for this miss it up prayer. Rather, he committed the sin, he committed offense, and the only way is that he must seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the only way is that he must expiate the missed out prayer with that of the nawafil, as there are many of the ahadith in which it is mentioned that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam أول ما يحاسب العبد به يوم القيامة. The first ever thing a person shall be asked about on the day of Qiyamah regarding the amal is salah, is the prayer. If the prayer will be altogether perfect, his other amal will be also perfect. If there is some deficiency, if there is some lacuna in one's obligatory prayers, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to one of the hadiths, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will command the angels to see in his account if there are nawafil, if there are optional prayers. And if it happened to be there, a person had already performed a lot of nawafil or optional prayers, then these optional prayers will compensate his missed out faraid or obligatory prayers. That's the point of these scholars who say that qada is not allowed. However, there's a way out to make it up, and that is performing a lot of nawafil, nafil prayers. So this is a position of Zahiri school of thought. And many other scholars have also adopted the same opinion, that qada is not allowed. Rather, a person must perform. If he missed out the Zuhr, he is not required to make it up for. Or if he missed out Asr, he is not required to perform the Asr at the time of Maghrib or Isha. However, they also agree that yes, this is acceptable only in two cases. If a person is asleep, so due to the sleep, he could not perform this within the time frame, or if a person forgot about it, because there is a clear hadith in which Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that فَلْيُصَلِّ إِذَا ذَكَرَهَا. So a person should perform the salah whenever he recalls it, whenever he remembers it. So it means the remembrance can be after one time, passing of one time, or two times, or three times, or it is also possible a person could not even after 2 or 3 days, because إِذَا ذَكَرَهَا, إِذَا technically it is adverb of time. So at any point of time, whenever he remembers, he is supposed to make up the missed out prayer. And there all the fuqaha agree. However, Zahiri school, after this, they say this is not applicable to anything else. But Jamhur, based on this hadith and other relevant evidences, they say if a person has missed out a prayer, since salah is obligatory upon us, it's not an ordinary act, rather one of the most valuable act of obedience, act of worship in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even one of the hadith says, as-salatu imaduddin. It is the pillar of Islam, foundation of Islam. فَمَنْ أَقَامَهَا فَقَدْ أَقَامَ الدِّينَ. Whoever established the prayer, whoever performed and observed the prayer, he protected the deen. وَمَنْ هَدَمَهَا فَقَدْ هَدَمَ الدِّينَ. Whoever destroyed it, he has destroyed the deen. So keeping in view the importance of salah, majority fuqaha, jamhur, they say it is necessary for a person to make up the salah which he missed out. If he missed out a prayer due to any reason, or sometimes without any reason, he is supposed to make it up, because the hadith is there when it is not allowed for the one who had an excuse with him. That the excuse was whether he was asleep or he forgot. When it is not allowed for such a person who had a valid excuse, a legal excuse for him, when it is not allowed for such a person to leave it, to give it up, then how is it permissible for a person who intentionally leaves it? Though the commission of sin is there, they cannot say. Actually, Ibn Hazm rahimahullah failed to understand, and fuqaha say that when Jamhur say that he can make up the qada, he can perform the qada of it. He thinks that in between the lines we can understand, we can infer from his statement that as if Jamhur says, okay, if it is okay, even if a person performs after the expiry of the time. No, they say the sin is there. He committed a major sin. There's no doubt about it. However, realizing the importance of salah itself, it is not allowed for a person to give it up, whatever be the reason. And there are many arguments with the fuqaha regarding the permissibility of qada. Even Hafiz ibn Quddama rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions, and he has mentioned almost ijma of ulama that it is wajib it is important for a person to make qada of the missed out prayer. If a person has missed up a prayer, then it is wajib upon him, it is obligatory upon him to make qada of it. Even if a person was asleep or he forgot or intentionally a person left the salah. So they are bound to perform the salah. Hafiz ibn Qudama says, rahimahullah ta'ala, لا نعلم بين المسلمين خلافا في أن تارك الصلاة يجب عليه قضاؤها. Ibn Qudama says, rahimahullah, that we don't know any difference of opinion among the scholars, among the Muslimin, among the scholars of Muslims, that أن تارك الصلاة يجب عليه قضاؤها, that whoever gives up the prayer, whoever doesn't perform the prayer, it is wajib upon him to make it up. It is wajib upon him to make qada of that missed out prayer. And Hafiz ibn Abdul Barr, rahimahullah, he is a Maliki faqih, Maliki scholar, and he has also given a long discussion confronting the opinion of Zahiri school of thought. And Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam clearly mentioned in many of the ahadith that salah is immensely important. And Hafiz ibn Abdul Barr, rahimahullah, he has given a long account of his argument based on the opinions of the Jamhur that it is tremendous, it is immensely important for a person, if he missed out the prayer, he must make qada of it. Now, the gist of the discussion, the difference of opinion is there. However, if we look at it deeply, this difference of opinion seems to be, we can say, figurative one. It's not a deep one, because as far as the conclusion is concerned, both agree that one has to perform the salah. Whether for Jamhur, the intention, the niyyah must be of wajib. But for those who don't count it as wajib, who say that now a person is not allowed to perform the qada, they say still he has to perform the nafil prayer. So salah has to be performed, which will be a kind of compensation on the day of Qiyamah. So the conclusion is that conclusion is almost the same, whether a person now performs qada in the form of qada or in the form of nafil. But a person is required to perform the salah. Then fuqaha also disagree. There's a difference of opinion among the fuqaha regarding that how many prayers are supposed to be made up for. And usually the 5, if a person misses out 5 prayers and more than 5, he's not required to make the qada. However, there's another discussion among the fuqaha. Say, for example, a person was born in such an environment that there was no connection with the deen, and a person was born simply, in our modern day terminology, we can say in a liberal environment, no importance of salah. So people were, immediate family members were not performing the salah. So for years together, decades together, a person did not perform the salah. And what about such a person? Now, after some time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him hidayah, the guidance to the deen. Now he realizes that all through these years, I did not perform the salah. What about such a person? According to Jamhur, yes, he has to make up the prayers. Because salah is something which Allah will ask on the day of Qiyamah. The first thing that will be asked on the day of Qiyamah is salah, is a prayer. Therefore, a person must count that how many times he missed out, then he should maintain a copy, a register in which he also. However, Zahiri school, according to him, since there is no qada, so according to them, such a person should increase his optional prayers, a lot of optional prayers, so that these optional prayers will compensate him on the day of Qiyamah if he fails to show the required amount of the salah. As say, for example, if a person was 100 years old, 100 years multiplied by 5, because 5 times in a day they are. And this will be the amount of the salah. So if there is any decrease in required amount, that will be compensated by the nawafil. So gist is that whenever we missed out, and firstly, it is beyond the question of a Muslim that he should miss out a salah. But if somehow he missed out the salah, then according to Jamhur, he must make qada of it. If it is within the time, if it is the amount of 5 prayers. If it exceeds, then there is no qada of such prayers. However, if a person has not performed salah for decades together, then he is supposed to make qada of it, and daily he must perform, say with the Zuhr, 2 Zuhr or 3 or 4 or 5 of the past missed out prayers, missed out Zuhrs, like what at the time of Asr, at the time of Maghrib, Isha. Likewise, he can compensate his missed out prayers of his life. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq to perform all the salah until the last rattle of our breath, because this is the first thing that is going to be asked on the day of Qiyam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq to perform salah all through the life, and at the same time we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our salah, because it's not only to perform the salah, there's a legal part, then there is the actual part is that is acceptance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many people they perform the salah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't accept their salah? So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among such people whom he grants the tawfiq to perform the salah and then he accepts their salah. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. If there is any question with anyone, you can ask, please. Jazakumullah ta'ala khaira. سبحان الله بحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.